Okay, we're online here. I'd like to call to order the August 27th Transportation Advisory Board meeting at 6:00 p.m. We are actually going to have one member online tonight. Is that right?
Chair, that is correct. Erica Boyd is online.
Okay, so do we have a forum?
Chair, we do. And I'd like to have our alternates, Ali and Carlos, who be acting as a member.
Thank you. And as Erica is online tonight, I'm going to be acting as chair. First order of business, approval of minutes. Are there any corrections to the draft meeting minutes provided in the agenda packet? Okay, hearing no corrections.
Well, we gotta have, that's better, hand raised.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I did notice there's one small grammar typo in the chair report. I would have to pull it up real quick, but I just wrote it down in my notebook as I was looking through it earlier. I don't know if that's even worth, correcting. It's not altering any kind of content or subject matter, but just something I noticed.
So yeah, we can make a correction. We'll take a look at the grammar of that.
I think it just needs, it says Chair Boyd reported that reached out to, so I think you just need a she in there. That she reached out to.
Yeah, sounds great. We'll make that edit.
Thank you. Any other edits or discussion on meeting minutes? Okay, without objection, without hearing an objection, we'll consider the minutes approved. Next item of business is public comment. So staff, I understand we have some people signed up for public comment tonight.
We do. And our first speaker tonight is Matt Rowe, who is online. So Matt.
Well, so let me, before we go, I'll read the guidelines for public comment, just make sure everybody's on the same page. Comments at tonight's meeting may be made in person or virtually, and we have both. For all who would like to speak during public comments, state clearly and pause frequently. State your name, address, and relationship to the city. For example, resident, property owner, or business owner. State your name each time before speaking. If you are attending virtually by computer or phone and would like to speak during public comments, in addition to that, please mute your microphone when not speaking. Having technical issues, we'll give some advice there. Public comments are an important part of the public process. We take them seriously and factor them into the decisions we make. Comments may be general or related to the topics we are discussing tonight. Please note that the comments are limited to 5 minutes. With that, we'll go to Matt Rowe. Did I get your name right, Matt?
Yeah, Matt Rowe. Hi. Thank you, committee members, for allowing me to speak. My name is Matt Rowe. I'm an architect and an urban planner, and I've been involved in numerous light rail area plans in our region in Vancouver, BC, as well as involved in a lot of development and architectural projects in Issaquah. I do live in Seattle, however. I applaud the city for planning ahead to accommodate regional growth and mobility options by embracing transit and transit-oriented development in central Issaquah. And so tonight I wanted to give you some comments regarding the central Issaquah station and alignment study. That's the last thing on your agenda tonight. Issaquah's future light rail transit service will also bring exceptional placemaking and economic benefits to the community. The station and light rail service can be a great way to smartly focus growth where it will be less car dependent and more walkable. It's also, I feel, a real game changer for the future if the station is located where it can be leveraged as a catalyst for a vibrant mixed use community. For this reason, I feel very certain it would be most successful if it can serve both sides of I-90. The guideway and station can be located within the I-90 right-of-way, similar to how they've done it on Mercer Island, and eventually it will be open at Judkins Park in Seattle on the 2 line. That will be open next year. The station area in this kind of corridor has potential to become a real town center destination and will give the community a strong sense of identity, a sense of pride, and better connect both sides of I-90 as more of a unified urban village. And after all, this is the city's vision for the central Issaquah plan and for future development. So this station will also greatly inform the location of the I-90 crossing study that you've already seen. So I'm pleased to hear the city's deferring and your committee to make any decisions on that until you can look at both these projects together, because they inform each other quite a lot. So thank you for your time, and let Thomas know if you have any questions or anything I can help you with. I'm happy to be of service. Good night.
Thank you for your comments. Staff, do we have a second speaker?
We do. Second speaker is Alan Wallace.
Over here, should I go up to the?
That'd be great. Yeah.
Now, try to follow all of your instructions, Mr. Chair. Alan Wallace, I'm a real estate licensed attorney with McCullough Hill. My address is 701 Fifth Avenue, Seattle. And I'm here tonight representing 2 shopping centers, the Commons at Issaquah and Town and Country Shopping Center. And speakers, I'll echo Matt Rowe's comments. I've been talking with him and also transportation engineers. We do really, speaking to your third item on your agenda about the light rail station, that's a very big topic, probably the biggest topic the board will be looking at this next year. I expect the city council will really be looking forward to your recommendation on this and take that into serious consideration. You may be familiar with the ST3 plan that went to the voters in 2016. This map is in here. It calls for a elevated line going south of I-90. And frankly, the town center shopping center has been identified as one of the key potential sites for the light rail station. There's many issues with that. One of the things I think is that the 2016 vote that occurred before the reality of the Costco headquarters became known. The Costco headquarters, that is the employment center for the city. You have almost 1.3 million square feet of Class A office building. And in terms of ridership and getting SD really incentivized to do this project and to find the funding for it, this funding is growing increasingly scarce. Having that employment center to be serviced by the light rail station is an important factor. And that's where we think the utilizing the I-90 median should be seriously looked at as an alternative. Number one, it's tremendous cost saving because you don't have the land acquisition. I do a lot of condemnation work. Property owners impacted by sound transit. This elevated line would plow through 2 dealerships, car dealerships, the Rowley's property, and then the town and center property. You're probably looking in today's money, 150 million in property acquisition costs just for those that elevated line segment just there alone. So, you know, making this more cost effective is more likely to actually see this get built. So, and then also making it so it can better serve Costco, the Costco campus. We're talking with their real estate people there as well. They haven't added their voice to this, but I expect them to, in future meetings, to have their voice and their opinion on this, as well as this board continues to look at this light rail station study. And I don't know, Mr. Godrees, do you expect this to be coming back to the board? I suspect quite a bit more, a few times. I'll also echo what Matt said too. It's really important, we think, to coordinate the I-90 crossing project with the light rail station. If those two can be coordinated together, that's where they're going to have the biggest bang for the buck, you know, in terms of mobility and improving access. So I've taken a lot of your time, or important time, but I will be here to If you have any further questions, so forth, when you discuss this a little bit later on your agenda. And we'll be following up as well, probably with letters or whatnot. Some of you may recall I spoke to you earlier this summer about the I-90 crossing project. So don't know if you won't be offended. I'm going to be back here a few more times as well. Because this is such a very, very important topic for Issaquah's future. Thanks.
Great, thank you for your comments. Sorry, staff, do we have any more public comments?
Mr. Chair, we do not. There's no one else online, and there's no one else in the room.
Very good. With that, we'll move on to regular business. So our agenda items tonight are first the update to some changes that have happened over the course of quite a while now to the transportation element and the mobility action plan. So I think John Mortensen is going to take us through those changes.
Thank you very much. I'm John Mortensen, Transportation Engineering Manager with the City of Issaquah. Give me a minute and I'll get my presentation up and get started. All right. Good evening. Mentioned John Mortensen with the City of Issaquah, and tonight I am here for Jillian to finish out the mobility action plan and transportation element proposed updates for multimodal concurrency and also routine revisions. The purpose of the item before you tonight is to receive TAP feedback on the proposed changes to the transportation element of the comprehensive plan and mobility action plan to incorporate the multimodal concurrency policy updates. The direction needed from the tab tonight is do the proposed changes to the transportation element of the comprehensive plan and mobility action plan appropriately capture the multimodal concurrency policy changes as previously deliberated by the Transportation Advisory Board. So in other words, we got your feedback and here to make sure that we heard you correctly before we move on to the next steps. And just a little refresher on the difference between the mobility action plan and the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is required by the state. It's a very high-level document. The transportation element has high-level transportation policies. It's looking at a 20-year horizon. The mobility action plan is really a document to guide staff as we're doing our work for transportation, and it mirrors the policies in the comprehensive plan with more detail on actions that can support the policies. It's really a functional plan. And this image shows the hierarchy of, think of the transportation element of the comprehensive plan being very high level, having a vision, goals, and policy that feed into functional plans like the mobility action plan, which has strategies, actions, and discusses resource allocations. The timeline for the steps that we've gone through to get to where we're at tonight. This topic was first introduced to the tab in April, and then in May, staff came to the tab and got feedback on bicycle and pedestrian changes. And in July, got some more feedback on transit level of service. And so, like I said, tonight we're here to take a check in to make sure that we incorporated the feedback correctly. And so now we'll go into the proposed updates. And this is another exhibit showing where we're at. Again, the project really wanting to enhance multimodal connections in the city and also ensure compliance with the state law, which requires agencies to have multimodal levels of service. And so we worked with the TAB on policy changes for leading pedestrian interval, transit signal prioritization, considering slope for bicycle level traffic stress, make some minor changes to pedestrian level of service, and develop a transit level of service policy with access mobility in place. And so tonight, I'm going to go over the documents and the changes that were made. And then once all these, the transportation element and the mobility action plan are finally adopted by council, then staff will work on implementing those documents. Some general feedback that staff received from the Transportation Advisory Board were general support for multimodal considerations, while also balancing it to consider the impacts of vehicular traffic. The thing that we heard over and over again was to ensure that the investments are practical and feasible, to clarify when the city is advocating to try and influence other organizations like King County Metro or Sound Transit versus things that the city has direct control over, and enhance or call out safety and security consideration. For leading pedestrian interval, there is now a new policy in the transportation element of the comprehensive plan, which implements LPI at priority pedestrian corridors. Inside the mobility action plan are a number of actions, including first upgrading the pedestrian push buttons, because in order for LPI to work for pedestrians with impaired vision, it's really important to have the accessible pedestrian push buttons because they can't rely on the sound of the cars going in the direction that they're walking to know when it's safe to cross. So the first step is to upgrade the pedestrian push buttons, and then to update the signal timing plans to incorporate leading pedestrian intervals, and then monitor to see how the intersection's functioning and make any adjustments if necessary. And so this supports the TAP feedback by improving pedestrian connections and focusing on safety, while also considering the impacts to automobile level service.
Hey, John, before you go on
Yeah.
to the next one, just as a point of order for tonight, do you want feedback on each of these as we go through the specific set of changes, or do you want to wait to the end, or what do you think is best?
Well, I'm open to ideas. I'm almost thinking it might be easier to do it one at a time, because if I was a TAB member and I had a thought on LPI and got to the end, I would have forgotten it. So let's do that unless anyone has any concerns.
That sounds fair. So members, if you have anything to bring up, or any of these, I think probably the next 6 or 7 slides, just bring them up during the slide, at the end of the slide. So does anybody have any concerns about LPI, leading pedestrian interval? Okay.
Very much in favor, obviously.
Okay. The next one is changes to the pedestrian level of service. And so the policy change is adjusted policy E1 to include practicality of investments and also prioritize pedestrian connections throughout all of Central Issaquah, not just the Regional Growth Center in Central Issaquah, and to provide options to meet the Tier 4 standards. There were no changes to the actions in the Mobility Action Plan, and this supports TAB feedback by ensuring investments are practical and feasible. So now I will pause if there's any feedback from the TAB.
Does anybody on the board hate pedestrians? Just kidding. We can have comments even if you don't hate pedestrians.
Can you remind me what Tier 4 standards are? Provide options to meet Tier 4.
Oh, yes, yeah. So that is Because originally it was that for a tier 4 location, that the way to meet the level of service was to lower the speed limit to 20 miles per hour. But that was in a situation where there's no sidewalk, where we're now saying if you have sidewalk on one side of the street, that you meet that level of service.
I think in Issaquah, maybe the Squawk Mountain was the only.
I was gonna say, I think.
Yeah.
We talked about that.
Yep. That sounds right.
Thanks, my neighbor. And I had one.
Yeah.
And the prioritized pedestrian connection throughout central Issaquah, that's an expansion of the prior goal?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Right. The change for bicycle level of traffic stress, the policy F5 was adjusted to include where practical and feasible. And there's also a language change, noted that the methodology now includes slope to consider for the level of traffic stress. There's no change to the actions in the mobility action plan. And this supports the TAP feedback by ensuring investments are practical and feasible. Pause for any comments.
So I have a couple of comments that are related to the support material in this case. So one of them is when we were looking at the changes to level of traffic stress, specifically related to slope, we looked at the map of that. And the map at the time had many of the bike paths that had essentially zero slope, at least in my opinion, getting a higher LTS score. And so clearly there was something wrong with the metric that was going into that. We had general agreement in the current document, I think that has not yet been addressed. So if we look at it, I don't know if you can bring up that map, that would be, we can bring it up later if you want. But there are still several bike paths that are essentially the lowest stress possible, and they are listed at higher stress levels.
Yeah, and it looked like the consultant had fixed some of them, but the Rainier Trail is a glaring obvious one that did not get fixed and does need to get fixed.
Yeah. I think it was Rainier Trail, the Pickering.
Oh, yes, yeah, yep.
And several other ones that didn't seem appropriate to be as high as they were. I think that kind of speaks to maybe we need some kind of check on this or testing procedure where maybe we just look at them and say, hey, is this right? And then, have a couple of cycles.
Oh, you're getting it up. Yes. Yeah, so as Adam had mentioned, the Pickering Trail is showing.
I think yellow is the lowest stress, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. So LTS 1.
Yeah, and I do know this has been updated because I specifically remember commenting on 12. And so I see they've changed 12, but yeah, you can see that the Rainier Trail didn't fully get changed and the Pickering Trail did not get changed.
Thomas, do you want to point those out for people that are involved?
Here, I'll. So 12, we just built some new protected bike lanes here. And so that's up near PCC. So that one did get updated from the previous one, but then here we've got the Pickering Trail, which is extremely flat. It's not as flat as you
And no road crossings to speak of.
Yeah, and then it ties into the roundabout here near Costco, and that's also extremely flat. Right, those are also near the creek, which I wonder when they're getting the data to automatically do it. I wonder if it's pulling something from the creek, which makes it seem not as flat as it is. And then here's the Rainier Trail, which is kind of interesting because here it's good, and then something happens. So, but this whole thing, it's a former railroad. It's as flat as it could be.
Right. And it's separated from the road.
Right.
There are a couple of crossings.
Which I don't think just having crossings puts you in LTS 2. Right. So
Yeah, they're pretty protected crossings, like the one on Sunset and the light and everything.
Yeah. No, I did.
So we need some kind of review procedure. Do you want to look at this again after we get sort of the final map?
I think it's fair to say that, you know, we leave it to staff to take it from here. Yeah, we'll get some eyes on it.
Okay.
But really great comment. We want to make sure that the map is reflective of the policy.
That's all I have. Oh, there was another part of the Viking LTS. It was a little ambiguous. But Viking, for having good support for Viking, we want to have a network. A lot of the language is in discussing having facilities within some range. It's the ambiguity there is you can build Viking facilities, by which I believe meant Viking lanes or Viking paths or something, without having a connected network. And so just having Viking facilities, if they don't form a connected network, probably doesn't meet what we would think of as the bar for good support for Viking. So there might be some opportunity to improve the language that's discussing the support for Viking.
All right. Okay. Any other comments on bicycles? Okay. On to the next one. Okay. The next one is transit level of service. And so the policy change is policy F5 was updated to reflect the new transit level of service and the transportation element. Language change was summarized the new level of service with access, mobility, and place considerations, and the role of ridership and frequency. It also denoted advocacy versus direct city actions and added new level of service guidelines. This created quite a bit of new actions and an adjustment of actions in the mobility action plan. The two new actions were to partner with transit service providers on capital projects and for higher frequency of service. It also included an adjustment of an action to advocate for bus stop amenities aligned with transit level of service. And this supported TAP feedback by clarifying advocacy versus direct role and enhanced safety. The feedback from the TAP on transit.
I guess so amenities, are we defining that in another area? Yeah.
Yeah, so amenities are like what's provided at the bus stop. We have language related to King County Metro's own threshold, which is 25 daily boardings. So it's related to that, and like there's a tiered approach. So our tier 1 is like greater than 25 versus tier 2 is like less than 25 boardings. And then the types of amenities, if there's more boardings, it would provide better amenities versus a bus stop that is less widely used.
And just to clarify, so like our point with this particular added action is whenever we do have a case where we do have more than 25 boardings, King County Metro already aware of that? And are we then just pushing them to, or advocating for them to come to Issaquah and do the amenities? Because they must be already aware of it, but
that's exactly right.
Situations.
Yeah, they're the keepers of the data. We even asked them for the data. They have their like data folks that have all the data. So this is really us advocating for things that they in effect owe us, but we're just sort of keeping them accountable And they have huge backlogs of needs, so it's us trying to like see if we can get it in a timely manner.
And what's the mechanism for the other two particular frequency and capital projects? Because yeah, I'm sure that we've been doing that kind of already, and so I was wondering like what stronger mechanism we have with these still new actions.
So with capital projects, that's for instance, I'll talk to this later, but we're getting a new bus, very exciting, which is going to require new bus stops. And so it's thinking about if there's a new bus with new stops, how does that integrate with projects that we're already building or will build? And so if, for instance, if the concrete is still wet, if we're still, if we're actively constructing it, maybe that's an opportunity for Metro to partner with us and put in a stronger footing that can support a shelter in the future. So it's more about sort of making sure that we're being good stewards of public funds, both at the local or county level. And so it's really about communication when we are both doing projects, and it's about collaborating when we can both have a cost savings just to support better ridership and overall usability of the transit system.
So I think last time we were talking about advocacy for bus changes. We talked about how we could sort of codify some of the interaction between the city of Issaquah and the transit agencies. I see that a lot of that language has been added here, and I think it's great. I think that takes us at least a step down the right path of really clarifying, how we really get work done. Some of that stuff is just going to be processes that we use on top of foundational documents. But I think to the degree that these things are stable over time, it's great to have them represented in the docs.
Any other feedback before I move on? And then there's also a mobility action plan, action change related to transit signal priority. And so the transportation element has new language to include there's language included in the new transit level of service, and in the mobility action plan, there's a new action under 6.4 to use TSP, and that it supports the feedback that we received from TAM to ensure that the investments are practical and feasible. And then the language also talks about consider impacts to vehicular traffic with provisions to look at things like queue jump lanes, where just adding TSP would degrade the intersection for automobiles. Any feedback on this slide?
Could you remind us what the impact of transit signal priority would be?
Yeah, so we did I'm going to say a very high level look at it using our PM peak hour traffic model, and just made some assumptions for a worst case scenario. And in a lot of cases, intersections would perform near or slightly better. But there are a few cases where the intersections would really degrade. Yeah, the buses were given priority. So those are the ones where we look at other measures. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think this was based on a set of assumptions using the modeling techniques and the models that we generated and updated on an annual basis every other year.
Every 3-ish years.
3-ish years. So like some of these things could be wrong, and there's kind of a broader process that's sort of trying to capture anytime we get something wrong. Do we detect it? How do we improve that? And that's, we look at it every 3 years. We remodel it for projection into the future. It certainly came up when we were looking at this that the transit signal priority project wasn't really clear on the trade-offs. And I think as it's written here, it's okay. It captures the fact that we need to look at those trade-offs. It might be nice to have some kind of a general process that we describe more deeply in these documents. It says, we do some kind of modeling, we check up on it, everything kind of falls into that, general framework of a transportation improvement project.
Okay.
I don't know what that looks like, but
Yeah,
some ideas.
So I have two ideas. So one, we can make revisions now. The other one is we can whiteboard it and come back to it. And the reason why is King County Metro has guidelines on TSP. And right now, none of our bus lines meet that threshold. So it's not like they would even be ready to talk to us. We could say, yeah, we want to put TSP everywhere. And they'd be like, well, we don't have enough buses. So it's not an urgent thing. I think it's an important thing for us to work on getting right at how we go about doing it. So I guess.
We got a clarification. So you say King County Metro, would they be funding TSP in that case if you pass the threshold? Or?
I don't think they would be, well, it talks about what they would fund and what the local agency would fund. It's really well worked to allocate. So a lot of the cost would still fall on the city with what we would need to do for our signals, but then they would have to do some things for their buses. But I guess the question I have to your comment is, would you be okay kicking the can down the road if we don't forget it, or would you like to see it in the updates that go forward, knowing that it's not going to happen in the next, I'll say 6 years?
The TSP in general is not going to happen in the next.
Yes.
I think it doesn't really make sense to do a whole bunch of work that's not going to be used. So I think I would leave that up to you guys.
Okay.
But some of those comments were kind of general, so
Right.
anytime we're looking at it's changes that impacts traffic,
Yeah.
falling into that framework where we understand the modeling of the prediction in the future.
Okay.
That kind of stuff.
We'll take a look. Let's see if there's some adjustments we can do. And if it looks like something that'll take a lot of work, then let you know that we'll wait on it, but that we have it on our to-do list, or if it's something we can just incorporate it.
Yeah, step one might be just take the process that we're already doing.
Yeah.
But basically this is I want to use, it's a provision that will happen in the future, and we're just setting out guidelines now so that we know what we want to do if this becomes because we're not expecting to have that many buses through Issaquah anytime soon.
Right. My crystal ball says as we get closer to light rail, and definitely when light rail is up and going, that there'll be a lot more bus lines, and that TSP will be an important tool in the toolbox in order to move the buses throughout the city, especially connecting to the light rail station.
This is slightly tangential, but are we expecting there to be like feeder buses into Issaquah once the light rail is here, like from North Bend, for example? We are.
Yeah, that's the common feature of most light rail stations is that there is a either connected or adjacent bus facility to make sure that everybody from outside of Issaquah can also reach that station.
Yeah, so it does seem like this is the sort of thing that we'd want to readdress the TSP policy as we get closer to light rail being installed.
Now, 6 years is very different than 20 years.
Yeah.
So probably going to hit before that. It's doing so.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
So first off, I think TSP is like a really good idea. It sounded, I remember from the last time we talked about it, it sounds like a good idea all around. My one question I had though is I remember previously when we were talking about the goals of TSP was to restore trust in public transit. I believe was one of the goals that was set out by making it so they arrive on time better. And so my question is, considering both practicality and feasibility, is adding like a few seconds to transit actually restore trust in riders? Because obviously, I remember when we were looking at charts, it like changes from like A to B to C to D, and it actually looks like a lot. But like in riders' mind, is like saving 20 seconds actually going to change whether or not they want to ride on transit?
20 so I'm not a transit expert, so I'm going to say what I think as someone who occasionally rides the bus. 20 seconds, probably not. But if the bus is unreliable and if you're on your phone and you've got your one bus away app and you can see the bus but the bus isn't really coming, it's stuck in traffic and you're waiting and 5 minutes go by and gonna get here. That, in my mind, ruins trust. 20 seconds, probably not so much. Where the fine line between when transit riders trust the bus versus when they don't, I don't know where that magic spot is, but that's my first attempt at what I would think.
Yeah, I mean, with the, transit single priority is definitely something that I'm huge supporter of, just because I've been to various cities and Seattle and around the country. I think all of us been, every time I'm on the transit system in another city, I always take note of like, does the bus or the tram go through lights pretty easily? And that's kind of like a statement of like, hey, the city actually cares about making transit better, public transit better for people. Whereas if the bus is stopping at every single light, it becomes, and I'm like, what is this about? And so I think, 20 seconds here and there might not affect things that much, but I think just systemically, it's just a statement of like, hey, we actually care about making the system a lot better for people. And it doesn't affect other travelers that much, as we've seen last month. So, yeah. Just general statement of support for ESP.
Yeah, so probably on the next slide, we're going to talk about, you're going to allude to the removal of a paragraph here that talked about researching and adopting an impact metric that better reflects multimodal system performance and efficient use of existing infrastructure as a replacement to or supplement for intersection service. So I think when we have challenges thinking about like what's the impact of 20 seconds faster going through a particular intersection. A lot of these discussions happen because we're casing things in the framework of intersection level of service. And it's a little bit difficult for us to reason about some of these higher level concepts of like the network flow through a path or a bus route, for example. And so we might think about maybe not removing the paragraph that was removed because we still have challenges in discussing the impact of these projects based on the intersection level of service.
Amir, did you have like your?
It was just basically along the lines of that, which is that the many intersections add up to a larger effect on the overall transit flow. And it's basically just similar to what Adam said, which is that you can lose track of the whole system if you're just focusing on the metrics for a single intersection.
Yeah, and it may be true that the intersection level of service, captures those routes, but it's still, every time we talk about it, we're still talking about, does that actually apply to this case? And there's a lot of counterintuitive aspects of that that make it challenging.
Right. So, got your feedback noted, and then minor housekeeping updates that are also included in these document updates. Bring both documents current, fix minor Scrivener's errors, for clarity and accuracy, provided additional context for policies and actions to support implementation efforts. And the direction that we've been collecting is do the proposed changes to the transportation element of the comprehensive plan and the mobility action plan capture the multimodal concurrency policy changes as previously deliberated by the tab. And Erica, I see your hand is up.
I guess I'll defer to Chair Adam if you're ready for comments. But I have one thing that I noticed that I was just curious about. That's more in the like housekeeping realm of things. I noticed that like references to Vision Zero were taken out. I don't know. My apologies if we've like talked about that as the tab before, and I just like I'm not remembering, but just had some curiosity around that. If there was like city council discussions about moving away from it, or
Yeah, I can speak to that. So yeah, Thomas Aldrez, Senior Transportation Planner. So as we were adopting the MAP, this would have been in February or March last year, I think. Or maybe that was this year. There was a discussion about removing language that is politically charged. Vision Zero has a lot of negative connotations amongst a lot of people. In practice, Vision Zero has not been very successful across the country. It's been around for about 10 years. So I think there's a lot of like baggage that comes with Vision Zero, but we're all sort of going in the same direction in the way that we say like safety is super important to us. And so in practice, there's been a movement away from using terms like Vision Zero towards using terms like safe systems approach, which is more encapsulating of like different actions that the community as well as like government agencies can do to move the needle. So it's really just, I guess, getting rid of terms while replacing it with an equally like successful way that it actually includes more of a thoughtful like process to prevent fatalities and serious injuries. So this was a point of discussion at the Mobility and Infrastructure Committee. It went through council into the adoption of the mobility action plan. So this, in a way, is sort of like pushing the policy language backwards. So the MAP is previously adopted, and now we're just like retroactively like correcting language into the transportation. So hopefully that answers that.
yeah, thank you. I didn't have that context. That's really helpful.
Well, so that was a city council decision, but did it have to do about afterwards? But it does have to relate with the US DOT as well, and what's happening there.
Right, and so this actually happened before
Before.
most of those discussions. So yeah, it has nothing to do with like the current political climate. Yeah, it's just.
Yeah, Vision Zero is nice. But
Thanks. Any other comments on the changes? Do you see anything missing? Anything that doesn't reflect discussions we've had in the past? All right, I'm not seeing anybody, so I think we've covered all of my comments as well at this point.
Okay, thank you. Next steps for this project, it will go to the Planning Policy Commission for the transportation element. And then also in September, the changes will go to the Infrastructure Committee. In October, the Planning, Development and Environment Council Committee, and council adoption in November. That concludes the presentation. Thank you for all the feedback all the way April to tonight. Guess put a lot of thought and made this a lot better process, so thank you.
Thanks, John. Okay, next item of business for tonight. We're going to look at the Central Issaquah Station and Alignment Study. Really just an introduction tonight. So Thomas Beltrez is going to take us through that.
Great, thanks, Chair. Appreciate your time. Yeah, so I've been really excited to give this presentation to this group. However, I have taken it to 5 other groups before you. So if anybody has tuned into like Issaquah's YouTube channel, you may have seen this before. But yeah, so we will be talking about the light rail study, something that I've briefed a couple times, just generally that we're doing. In this presentation, I'll just give a brief background. Many of you will already know about the light rail planning activities that we've done to date. And then I'll just briefly talk about why it is that we're studying this light rail study, the timelines that I'm looking to bring this through, and then the ways that I hope to engage with the board. So very generally, this is a timeline that shows how Issaquah has planned for light rail. So in 2012, we adopted a central Issaquah plan. So this just provides a high level vision and set of design guidelines and ways that we are thinking about Central Issaquah as a neighborhood. So this is a neighborhood plan that includes various sub neighborhoods. And so in 2012, we adopted this. It's been amended twice since then. And so this was sort of the groundwork, thinking about Central Issaquah as being an urban village feel, like higher density than the rest of the city, just having more of an urban sort of walkable feel. In 2015, a section of Central Issaquah, shown in green, was designated as a regional growth center. And so some of you may know that in lots of major cities in the area, there's a section of the city that is designated for higher densities of jobs and housing. And so by 2050, we're expecting that in this green area, the majority of our jobs and housing will be located. So this is sort of bounded by Newport, Southwest Sammamish Road, and then sort of kind of terminates at the east side, kind of near the Issaquah Valley, which neighborhood is that? Yeah. So yeah, that's that green area. This is where we're expecting light rail to go. So in 2016, voters approved ST3. It's a ballot measure to expand high capacity transit throughout the region. And that also includes the development of the 4 line. So if you'll recall, we're rolling out the 2 line that's in Bellevue, and eventually it'll connect to Seattle. There'll be a 3 line, and then we're talking about the 4 line. So this 4 line is connecting South Kirkland through downtown Bellevue. There's going to be brand new stations at Richards Road and Eastgate, and then we'll terminate at Central Issaquah.
Hey, Thomas. I just, when order, do you want questions as you go?
I'm happy to do either. Yeah, this is purely introductory, and yeah, happy to make this conversational or yeah, doesn't matter to me.
Okay. As far as the Central Issaquah growth area goes, you mentioned that's been updated. So both historically and moving forward, what have we seen in terms of how many times it's been updated? What are we going to see in the next 20 years in terms of, is it going to shift?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the boundary of the neighborhood will remain the same. Updates, I believe, have been related to like land use code type things. So there are lots of requirements, both like from zoning and just like the rules of like how you can design the facade of a building, for example. These are all included in the plan. And so, future updates, we're gonna, sort of after this study that I'm referring to, we're gonna want to think about like land use changes and sort of how that flows back into stationary planning. One thing that our study, I'll get into in a second, is looking at is like ways that we can ensure that the light rail station is going to be successful. And that has to do with like how high you can build, what sorts of like buildings or like businesses can exist in an area. These are all things we're going to want to think about and sort of flow that back into the conversation to make sure that wherever that light rail station is, it's going to have the potential to support jobs and housing and like things to do, places to go, access to the outdoors, for example, like all these things.
Yeah, so you can imagine this as we've zoned stuff for high density in there, or we're going to build a light rail station in there. And you can also imagine that flip the other way. You selected this as a good spot for a light rail and therefore to zone it for higher density. And you're sort of like, imagine it's kind of cyclical. It's back and forth.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Land use can be either a carrot or a stick. And so we're hoping to approach it holistically to make sure that like we're fostering a good environment for our transit station.
So along those lines, have zoning rules already been updated in this region? And if not, when is the city planning to update?
Yeah, so the last update was 2019, so it's been a little bit. My understanding is that we will be looking at updating probably, we're going to start those conversations in 2026 as we're thinking about like station locations. But in practice, probably 27 is when we would actually like take a hard look and start updating the
Up to the high density.
right. And it's all tied together with like the locally preferred alternative that I'll speak to in a second. But we're going to want to make sure that like we think about the vicinity, like the walking distance, if you will, of like where that station is and like what the land uses are around there currently and what it might help us to look like in the future to support the areas adjacent to that station.
I have a question regarding the green area highlighted. That while that shows a lot of new development or possible density increasing by the city of Issaquah, was downtown never looked at or given thought, or is it just because of the station's going to be located around that green highlighted area?
So when you say downtown, do you mean like Old Town?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Old Town is historically listed, so it is not to be touched.
Okay.
But that's a great question. Yeah, so this area was like specifically called out. It's on the valley floors. It's a lot of it is big box retail. There's lots of parking lots. It's very flat. It's a great place to build, and the city acknowledges that there's a lot of neighborhoods that are already built out. We don't want to add density that wouldn't necessarily fit with the rest of the city. This area has a lot of room to grow and a lot of growth potential. It's also, as was mentioned previously by a commenter, this was before Costco came in. Was when this was originally like thought of. Since then, Costco, top 5 employer in the U.S. is now here. So it is actively growing, but we want it to grow a little bit faster, and we think that light rail is going to really help. We also need help from the development community to like make that a reality.
So if we look at projects like Trailhead apartments, what is it, condos, apartments? Is that the level of density that will support light rail, or is that still too small?
We are going to need more than that.
In terms of density, or in terms of more of those dense
Yeah, so I think we're expecting, I think it's like 6,000 units. And, within walking distance of the station, so we're not prescribing like it needs to be a certain height. But there is a lot of like potential within the area that exists here to build. If you think about what makes a station successful, it's just like the proximity to it. And that can be either like, it could be a 5-story building, or it can be lots of smaller, 3-story buildings next to each other. And like you can, there's many ways to get there. And so our code just says what you can do, what the development community can do. And these are all sort of a mixture of choices that are made in order to like achieve that. Any other questions, or should I keep moving on? Yeah, definitely. If any questions that come up, just happy to answer them on the fly. So again, this is ski link, the line 4. The current estimates for this line are to build as early as 2041. Sound Transit in 2016 indicated that if funding was a challenge, they could build it by 2044 at the latest. So, working back from that timeline is sort of how we are approaching this study. And a question that I get asked all the time, and just wanted to be very upfront, is like, what is the city's role in this, and what is Sound Transit's role? So just want to be very clear, like this Line 4 project is a Sound Transit project. They're going to plan it, they're going to design it, build it, and then after it's built, they're going to manage it, like the operations. So the final decisions on where the station goes, the track alignment, all these are things that Sound Transit is going to decide. The board specifically, Sound Transit Board. They're going to think about regional priorities and sort of what it means to connect lots of people to jobs and housing, connecting to schools, connecting to the outdoors. They have sort of a regional view of this, and the city, our view is, we are a collaborator. We're going to work directly with Sound Transit. We're also going to advocate for local priorities. So we have some tools at our disposal, and we've, in our couple years of research, we've found that certain tools work better than others. Some communities that have already worked with Sound Transit have used tools like zoning, land use, and permitting to sort of move the needle and make sure that the community is at the heart of these decisions. So that's basically our approach. This isn't our project, but we're coming out as an advocate, and we're hoping to influence with the tools that we have at our disposal. So starting those conversations, we basically started out in 2022. We did a transit study. I think some of the folks on this board will remember. We did a transit study, and one of the major deliverables was developing a planning guide. And so this guide is really just like our first attempt at looking at some of the pros and cons of us being at the end of the line, thinking about what it is that we need in a station area for it to be successful. This document also talks about the project timeline that Sound Transit will likely have. And it started looking into some very conceptual station locations. And at the end of the document is a checklist of things that we are doing to be proactive. We're actually working ahead of Sound Transit's schedule. And so that first action item in this document called out and said, okay, in order to coalesce all of our ideas, we need to have a vision of what we want as a community, and then the guiding principles for what that station should look and feel like. So I have some links in the memo, but essentially the vision for Central Issaquah Station. So this can be thought of as like the walkable distance around wherever a station is. It should have lots of things to do, places to go. It should be really accessible, but from like the train itself should be like very functional. but it should also be easy to get to that station. And a lot of conversations are about like, Issaquah is very much about sustainability. And, the station itself should feel like it's part of the community. And so that last tier is really talking about like the way that the station feels like you're naturally like entering Issaquah. It feels like a nice place to be. It's a very comfortable and nice place to be. So this is, and there's links on the website. I also linked it in the memo. There's a lot of documentation on this. That's kind of generally the flavor of that. So that was the first deliverable. And then the second one that we're working on is the station study. And so this is us being proactive again for a sound transit project. And the goal here is to have a planning report. By the end of it, by the time this is done, when we hand it off to Sound Transit, it will be, I'm sure, several hundred pages long. We're really just documenting all the actions we've taken, all the conversations we've had with the community, providing lots of thoughtful ideas on, what it is that the community wants and which station location we think is going to really meet both local needs, but also will score favorably with Sound Transit. So we're trying to provide a lot of just validity to the ideas that we have, and ultimately it's going to be given to Sound Transit. They're going to do their own analysis, and we're not competing with their analysis, but we're showing that we've given this a lot of thought, and the community has really thought about this and thought about like what it means to have a station in central Issaquah and like where that best location is going to be. So the primary deliverables for this are, we're going to have some evaluation criteria. That's going to be the next thing that I bring to tab in October. So we'll have evaluation criteria scoring out the different points of the vision and guiding principles. So something that I will sort of go into more detail in our October meeting is the vision and guiding principles and sort of how that looks against the criteria. In Q2 of next year, we're going to look at some potential station location and track alignments. We're going to look at things that we think are meeting the vision and guiding principles, and then we can talk about sort of how that measures up in terms of the criteria that we develop. And then ultimately, at the end of 2026, we should have that one station location and the track that connects to the rest of the 4-line. We should have that preferred concept. And the goal would be for City Council to adopt that preferred concept. By the end of 2027, we should be able to hand that off to Sound Transit as part of their own technical analysis that they'll do. But yeah, this is basically the time.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I just had a question on the community visioning. Obviously, the needs of the community and the community itself is going to look a lot different in 20 years, and so I think we should be planning L'Oreal Station in terms of that community in 2045. And so, how are you trying to project into the future, like what the need, like what the community is saying that they want? Like we're in 2025, but we need it to be reflect 2045 realities.
Yeah, a lot of the discussions we had with the vision and guiding principles were within the community, but also community members outside of Issaquah. So I think it was like kind of spitballing here, but the second largest population of survey respondents that we put out. And for context, we put out a survey. It was taken by 805 people, Issaquah residents and like people that work in Issaquah were like the biggest cohort. There was folks in Sammamish, Bellevue. I think there was like 30 different communities that were thought of and like people that like responded to our survey. So we are thinking broadly. We do know that Issaquah's demographics will change significantly. I met with folks in the community center, at the senior center. And I will tell you that a lot of them don't care about this because they say, I won't be here. So like, I'm really glad you're doing this, but like, it doesn't affect me. And so we heard those too. But we also heard from folks, I met with the Issaquah Youth Council, and I was talking about them like, hey, like when your kids are here in like 20 years, like, do you think they're gonna want this? Like what do you think they'll want then? So I'm trying to like, talk to all swaths of age groups. And as an additional anecdote, I'm meeting with an advocacy group that meets on the east side monthly, and they just talk about mobility issues. And it's really hard to know like in the future, like what some people want, but like hopefully by talking to a lot of different people with a lot of different perspectives, like we can kind of figure out something that'll work. But one thing that was very apparent when I was doing the surveying is that future like and forward compatibility with like the station is super important, as is sustainability in general. So those are pillars of this vision and guiding principles that we're like carry forward in those discussions. So I think I'll probably just end here and say like I have 2 more formal check-ins with TAB that I'm hoping to do. So the first one's going to be in October. That's going to be a joint meeting with the equity board. So pretty excited about that. And then in Q2, we'll likely have some alternatives to think about. And it's possible that more alternatives come out through the process. So maybe we won't do all 6 initially, but definitely 2 check-ins anticipated, and there could be more in the future. And I'll also say that I'm meeting with 5 other boards and commissions. And I'm also meeting with lots of community groups just outside of the traditional like board and commission structures. So if you find yourself at another community group that I'm at, or if you know of a group that would like to talk to me, I'm happy to do that. But there will be many opportunities to chat with me if anybody wants to.
Thanks. Any comments from the board?
Super excited.
I am too.
Like I'll be here in 20 years. That's fine.
Looking forward to possible taking it.
So this is kind of an extension of something I asked earlier, but is it likely that the buildup of that region will happen before light rail has arrived, like significantly before? Or, yeah, like, what do you expect? Because obviously it's partially up to developers, but what do you expect will happen? Like, will we be seeing development like 10 years before, right? Light rail arrives 5 years before. When is that process going to start?
It's going to be largely dependent on like market forces. For example, some developers and some property owners have 20-year leases that they have already locked in. And so that's going to mean you can't do anything to the property for 20 years. Whereas other developers are trying to get in ahead to, do something when it's slightly cheaper to build versus later. It's going to be market driven. It's going to be based on like individual, some people just own a piece of land in the regional growth center that's like smaller than others, and maybe they're just like they have the money now because of personal reasons, or so it's going to be largely just like piecemeal put together. And I would say that once a station is called out by Sound Transit, that's where we're going to start seeing movement. And we'll start seeing a little bit of movement before then. But once that happens, that would probably be when a lot of movement happens, and then it takes a while to build. So then, you have to construct it. You have to like think about like the layout of like what that's going to look like. It can take some time. So
when would we expect them to make a call?
As early as So the process would start as early as 2027. I would expect it by 29 or 31 based on their timeline.
Are you learning anything about any lessons learned from the Bell Red or Wilburton stations and their station planning? Because I was on tour with the city of Bellevue not too long ago and went around those two stations. And honestly, a lot of development still needs to happen on those stations, but just wondering if you've been able to pick up some lessons learned from those stations and their planning.
Yeah, lots of lessons learned from Bellevue and elsewhere. I think first and foremost, like working with the development community is going to be really important. We've seen that Sound Transit just throws a bunch of development money into a area, but it's not met with like private funds. It can just become the station, and then like sort of nothing else changes. So part of these conversations are like chatting with the development community and saying, okay, just so you know, like this is coming. Like if you have 20-year leases, like know that, like just think about that. Like if you're thinking about doing any sort of development, like just think about like sort of these timelines. So it's kind of flagging it in terms of just like the city's perspective. I know that in Bellevue, they worked on getting betterments with Sound Transit. And so that basically means, if Sound Transit is going to build something, if they're already working on it, and, if the city's interested in like, piggybacking on their own project, like there's some economies of scale, there's some ways to like, get something for a little bit cheaper that sort of benefits everybody. So that's something that Bellevue did is I think they built like a pedestrian walkway across the freeway when they were designing the station and sort of like the multimodal connectivity of the station itself. Yeah, there's lots of lessons learned, and I think once Sound Transit has like more once the project has sort of like framed out a little bit more, like there's going to be a lot of opportunities to work directly with Sound Transit. One thing I've mentioned previously is that Sound Transit often pays for a staff member for the city, someone that can be like working with them, because it is a full-time job to be like supporting Sound Transit. So there will be a staff member that will be working as a city staffer, working directly with Sound Transit. So there's going to be a whole lot of conversations at the staff level, but also like beyond. So lots of opportunities to sort of get those collaborations going.
All right, I say hand raised from Erica.
Thanks, Chair. One of the things I had asked Thomas earlier was about kind of similar to the questions we've been asking about, what's worked well and how are the most recent stations that are online now, what's our lessons learned from them. One thing I was wondering was, how many cases do we have of, a city or locality presenting Sound Transit with what they prefer for siting, and if Sound Transit has ever just gone in a completely different direction than what was desired. And he said there is, but there's also good cases of Sound Transit, taking a really critical look at the city's feedback and going with something like that was their preferred alternative or what they wanted. And so documenting kind of the why is what was most critical to that. And so I know that's something that I will be keeping in the front of my brain as we're going along in this process, is just how can we weave in our why of this is why we as Issaquah want it here or want it to look like this. I don't know, Thomas, did I capture that very well? I mean, it was your thoughts. So
Yeah. So again, something that I emailed Erica previously. The vision and guiding principles, the documentation through this project, we're really all sort of, we're trying to define like what our preferences are in a way that is like crystal clear to Sound Transit. Ultimately, there could be, a 30th, alternative. Hopefully we don't look that far because that would really put the project back. But like, if there is an alternative that is something that we did not think about, at least we will have a framework and like a defined, scoring criteria, and like we've defined like what it is the community is hoping for. That can really help steer those conversations and say, okay, like, maybe our option wasn't exactly what you need because maybe operationally it doesn't fit, because now that you've looked into it even further, it's not going to meet your operational needs. Like that is a very, that is a possibility. But if we've defined ahead of time, like, we really liked this alternative because X, Y, and Z, and we didn't like these other ones because of these reasons. Like these are all like very specific things. Just like when you're negotiating with like someone you're trying to like, work with, if you're getting some work done, like you define what you want and you say what you don't want. And like, these are all very helpful things to help us negotiate an alternative that like is going to be a win-win. So we're really trying to like really document. It's important to like hold the line once you've made a decision. There have been communities that have changed their mind, and then that like pushes back the timeline of the whole thing. So we're being very specific with what we're hoping to get out of it, and we're gonna be a very like steadfast partner in this process. And part of that is just like we need to really like set up our preferences, make it clear so that we can get what we want out of this.
Along those lines, when you come back to us in Q4, can you characterize the role you want the transportation advisor to take and giving you feedback? Like, do you want us to cover everything?
That sounds good. I will think about that. And
It's a question answer.
Yeah, I'll think about that, and then when I come back in Q2, we'll have a really good conversation about this.
All right. Well, thank you, Thomas. That concludes our regular business. With that, we'll go on to reports. So we have a staff report tonight.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to, sorry, give me 1 second. Wanted to announce that we will be getting a new bus line. So something that is not way in the future and is actually happening Saturday. So we're getting the 203. It's going to have frequencies of 30 minutes, which is very nice. Transit planners call it span of service, but that, basically it's going to have buses from as early as 5 a.m., which is really exciting, all the way to midnight on the weekdays. One thing that we have heard time and time again is like if you work, for instance, at a hospital where it's very early in the morning, late at night, you can't take the bus. Well, hopefully some more folks can take this if they have like a later commute, or if they're doing like later night things. Also very exciting is that there's going to be weekend service that goes fairly early in the morning to fairly late at night. So really excited about this bus. It's going to add a lot. The public works staff and I, we met with Metro staff, and we talked about some new bus stops that are going to be on Newport. So there's going to be 3 bus pairs on Newport that will connect a lot of the townhomes. There's a senior center over there. So very, very exciting stuff. It's also going to connect near the zoo. So new stops, new line. Very excited about this. It'll also take you to Costco. So if you're interested in taking up Costco goods, or if you work at Costco, that's a good way to get to work.
Is this bus gonna have extra trunk space?
Yeah, I was gonna say, imagine like going with a Costco haul on the bus. That would be rough.
I don't know that you'll be able to take the toilet paper.
And then it obviously connects up to the light, which is what.
Yes.
Right, Mary?
I was, I almost forgot my question. No, so when you have 5 a.m. to midnight, is that like the last bus is leaving at midnight
So this is
or arriving? Like,
let me think about this for a second. So this is the entire route. And it spans from this time. So I think the answer would be the last bus would be dropping you off at midnight somewhere down the line. Yeah.
The schedule is posted, so you should.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah. And then can you also like, is there any way for you to zoom in on that map? Because it's.
There's no stop pairs on here on this map, but I can zoom in to.
It's just hard to read at the size of us.
So that's crossing my PCC.
Yeah, so it'll take you down to Newport. There's 3 bus pairs. It'll take you to the transit center. It'll cross I-90. It'll take you through like Pickering area. There's a couple stops. I think the stop was like between Costco like warehouse and then like building 4, was it? A lot of folks like live over here. It'll go over by Pickering Barn, and then it'll take you back over here, and then it'll at the parking right.
Did you say it's starting Saturday?
Saturday. Yeah. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe it's the end of the month or something. Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, the soft launch of the 203. Okay.
Train the new drivers.
Cool. So that was my first report. I have some good news on the intelligent transit systems fronts. So John wanted me to tell you all that traffic signals on East Lake Sammamish and Southeast 56, Northwest Sammamish Road are now operating in coordination. So that's very exciting. So coordination will help you get the green wave so you can keep driving through those intersections. So that whole corridor is operating in coordination. So less delays, less stops, less travel time, lower fuel consumption, decreased emissions. So you can pass through more easily. The next signal is going to be signal coordination group is along Northwest Going Boulevard. So that's the next grouping. So very exciting there. And then a more minor update, the intersection of 12th and SR 900 17th has been operating poorly recently. So
That was actually when we turned the coordination on, it started performing terribly. So we moved it out of the coordination until we had time to figure it out and troubleshoot what happened.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention that in case someone drove through there and it's like, all these idiots. Because I think overall it's working well, except for that location.
That is interesting. It's, the predicted result was probably it was going to operate well there, and the observed result didn't match that. So there's something to learn.
Yep. Yeah. So it goes back to our previous conversations, and a lot of this is just trying it out and using actual data on the ground and just like sort of optimizing there. So we have traffic signal technicians who work really hard to make sure that our system's operating smoothly. So that's just another instance that we're hoping to improve.
Okay, anything else from the staff report?
That's all I got. Thanks.
Okay, I don't personally have anything for a chair report tonight, but Erica, do you have anything? Check with you.
Yeah, thank you. If anyone's interested, Issaquah Culture Fest is happening on Saturday, September 6th at the community center. I know sometimes Tisha or other city staff will invite us. So maybe that'll be in our emails, but either way, I know we've been invited years past. So I figured I'd highlight that. It's a good event with food vendors and cultural performances put on, coordinated by the city. And yeah.
I think we maybe have a music festival on Sunday as well. So lots of good stuff going on at that. Okay, so I think that's all for the reports. Any other business, any board members or staff have anything to share? Okay, hearing nothing, then I will have the meeting adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.